Let me give you a little bit of the history of how this presentation came to be. I ran an alternative school for disruptive students, disruptive teenagers, for 13 years, and we used a program model called Therapeutic Community, and the school worked like a charm. We never had to call the cops, we never had any violence. We graduated, a couple of our students got scholarships. By any measure of achievement, the school really did well. And the way that we communicated with the kids got us to thinking, wait a minute, maybe we could teach this stuff to other people, just like with educators, therapists, youth workers, and even maybe with parents. What this whole approach is saying is that if we can all learn a scripted method of communication and dealing with teenagers, which will instantly get their respect and help us enter into their world. Goal: learn how to effectively enter the world of teenagers. Results: you will first be surprised that your teen will instantly understand and respect the way you are talking to her, even though her behavior may not instantly change. You will very quickly begin to feel the balance of power shift from your teen back to you. Teens struggle with issues of power and freedom on a daily basis. So when we were running our alternative school, it didn't matter what the kid did. And we had some physical damage. I mean, the kids obviously weren't angels. We had other stuff. But we could always relate it in a positive way, saying, well, you're not making much progress on your pathway. That's an issue of power. The way this therapist started with this teenager did what? It instantly got his attention. It instantly got his respect. That's what this is. This is communication skills with teenagers. This is an example of using communication first with a teenager and then with the parents of that teenager to instantly get their attention, very instantly get their respect. This is what this whole approach is about. Over and over again, working with teens in the right context. When you challenge them in the right way to be everything they can be, or be even a little more, they almost always will respond positively. Teenagers, the teenage time is when we struggle with issues of power and freedom. Once upon a time, you had no idea what money was. You had no clue what money was. It was round, shiny, silvery things, or it was a piece of paper, like with green ink on it, and that was all you knew. But then one day, you went to the store and you were able to trade this shiny, silvery thing or a piece of paper with green ink on it for something real, like candy or gum, something like that. That was me, and I'm willing to bet 9 out of 10 of you it was something like that too. This was your first experience with power and freedom, as we're using the term. You had the power because you had the money, and you had the freedom because your parents let you buy whatever you want. Remember, in the teenage years is when social constraints kick in. We pretty quickly learn physical restraints on us. Like, you're a toddler running around the kitchen and your mom's cooking something on the stove. It smells good, so you ask your mom, what's that, what's that? Mom says, what's mom saying? Don't touch, hot, hot. But you're a 2-year-old, 3-year-old. Wonder what hot means. Put your hand, ow! That's how we learn physical restraints, physical restraints. But the only way we learn social restraints, and most of that learning occurs during the teenage years, is basically through trial and error. And this is why teens are what they are. This is why they're so difficult. They're learning to come to grips with social sanctions and social constraints, and the tools they use to do it are power and freedom. One of the things we have to do to use this kind of approach is get over our adult hang-ups about being fair, being right, not going too far. And when we finally accept in our gut that teenagers are not adults, it enables us to adjust the way we communicate with them to get into their world and to avoid all the adult hang-ups we have about how we talk to them. Remember, everybody in this room was a teenager once, right? We have developed a complete communicational system specific to dealing with adolescents. The system is based on 11 principles we use in our alternative school for disruptive students. We call our approach self-responsibility training. The 11 principles come out of a European model called therapeutic community. TC is based on the European practice of youth work. Engage and empower the peer group, where teenagers know right away when other teenagers are on the edge. That's part of what makes therapeutic community work. They know instantly because they're part of their own culture. You might have heard of situations, and I've been involved in situations, where teens would spend all night with other teens because they were so scared about them. As a parent, you want to encourage that. That is one of the last cards to play in a lot of suicidal situations with teenagers. If you get the advanced warning signs, beginning to understand that he really needed tough love, that getting over on his mom would only end him up in trouble. That was real progress. It was up and down, it's been up and down, he's still a teenager, but the initial way that Dad handled the whole thing had enough of an impact and got his attention that it really started him on the right way. What's the single biggest mistake all parents make all the time with their teenagers? Treating them as if they were adults, right? That's the single biggest mistake every time that parents get caught into. How many times have you had interactions with a teenager and there was a big disconnect between what the teenager was saying and what you knew she was really trying to do? Ever happened to you? There's a disconnect between their content of what they're saying and their actual intent. This is how basically the disciplinary system works in a therapeutic community. They knew that this school was different than all the other alternative schools out there. So you can imagine an alternative school where the kids wanted to come. That's what we had. And are you beginning to see that all of this comes from the core premise: teenagers are not adults. I ran a whole state institution based on therapeutic community. And it wasn't me, it was a system. But in 3 years, I took it from the highest runaway rate and incident rate to the lowest in the state. It's not me, it's the system. When you create the kind of culture that you can work with a peer group positively, you don't have issues of restraint and seclusion. Would you rather be right? Would you rather be effective? That's what teenagers teach us. That's what my kids taught me. You can use this in classrooms, in residential care, schools, wherever. The language of power through the 11 principles absolutely and completely takes the emotion out of the interaction.